Good afternoon, my darlings. It's Tuesday, the 1st of April. April Fool's Day, if you will, but no fool should be reading this. Dun dun dun. Yes, it's time for a book review, and I think we should do Shaun Hutson's Relics. Oh gosh, what a fabulous, fabulous book. Now, this edition here in my hand is from 1987. It has 269 pages, over 50 chapters, maybe 60 chapters. We'll just have a quick peep. Sorry, 70 chapters. You're getting your money's worth with this one. I can honestly say, holy focaccia, it's enough to make Muriel spit out a hobnob. It certainly is. It is a ton of fun from start to finish. It's splatterpunk gore and so much more. Oh yes, in this novel we will cover, and I wrote it all down for you, devil worshipping, animal sacrifice, heroin addiction, an archaeological dig, animal abuse, druid gods, Celtic tribes, staff dying mysteriously on a leisure park build by machinery, mass orgies, gratuitous sex scenes, police investigation of mass murders, and child kidnapping. Goodness me, the quiet English town of Longfield. Would you really want to live in Longfield? Do you really know what's going on down at the local Women's Institute in Longfield and at Longfield Museum? Blimey, how many times can I say Longfield before you have to have a shot? Actually, probably having a stiff drink whilst reading this lovely, gloriously gory novel. It might actually help. Oh my goodness me, I first read this when I was 18 years old. And I lost my copy in with another box of books that I had when I moved here to this house. Mysteriously, my Shaun Hutson collection also disappeared. I just don't think it was destined to come on that move. After many years, I am slowly tracking down my Shaun collection again. I've finished collecting all of my James, and now I'm moving on to Shaun. And I am slowly but steadily rebuilding my collection. Oh yes. I know, a middle-aged lady, housewife, enjoying novels like this. Oh my goodness me. Yes, some of the sex scenes in here are phenomenal. I did not know people could bend that way. Excuse me. Oh, starting with the sneezies of the season. Yes, we're going into spring allergy season, of course. What am I going to be doing a lot of this season? Sneezing. Yes. Well, I don't know where to start. It's got everything going for it. We have the mad Baron, who is enticing young teenagers into getting addicted to heroin while practicing devil worshipping, sacrificing and flaying of animals, and drinking of blood and mass orgies in a local wood. And that's on Tuesday night, everybody, if you're interested in going. I'm sure they'll always be looking for new recruits. I'm just joking. But yeah, it's that kind of book. It really, really is. We also end up with a massive archaeological dig. One of the most, how can I put this? One of the most important archaeological digs that this country has ever had in its life. It has everything going on in there, including a mass sacrificial pit of children's skulls. Yes, you heard that right, children's skulls. These children have had their eyes ripped out of their heads and their heads removed and their bones stacked in a special round sacrificial pit, and the skulls are stacked on what, Pol Pot, he had nothing on this. Good grief. And probably where Shaun may have got one of his ideas. Um, his books tend to read an awful lot like a movie script, if you like. If you've ever been into Lucio Fulci films, I wrote a couple down for you. I was thinking The Beyond in 1981, City of the Living Dead 1980, or House by the Cemetery 1981. If you've a Lucio Fulci fan and you have not seen those, and guaranteed you're going to love them, because I think you got a lot of inspiration for this novel from there. I really do. Lucio Fulci does splatter gore, splatter punk, splatter whatever you want to call it. Snuff films almost. Well, anyway, his books tend to read, Shaun's books tend to read an awful lot like a Lucio Fulci film. Or maybe if you're into Dario Argento and you might like Suspiria from 1977 or Inferno from 1980. Or later on, the Three Mothers trilogy, which came out Mother of Tears in 2007, which was done quite a few years afterwards. It was, especially as the last one was 1980, but I digress. Anyway, Italian gore giallo. Yeah, you're going to get that feel in here. I mean, apart from the drugs baron that's, getting his rocks off with the teenagers and all on heroin and whatever, and Tuesday night, you know where to be. We've got the archaeological dig, which was accidentally found whilst they were building the leisure complex. Now, everything that could go wrong on this build is doing. There are members of staff that are on the build that are being killed by machinery, crushed to death, if you will, by trucks and diggers and caterpillar diggers, and not ginormous caterpillars. I meant a caterpillar digger. And they've been killed by that. Not only are the staff getting killed there, that the staff that actually work for James Cutler, who is the kingpin builder of Longfield. Said it again. See, gotta have another shot. Yes, you need another shot for that. Anyway, James Cutler, all his staff, yeah, they're all being murdered. They're all having their eyeballs ripped out of their heads. They're all having their skin flayed off them. They're having their intestines removed. But there's no weaponry done to rip them from throat to groin, if you like. It's blunt instrument. I wonder what could be causing that, eh? And they're ripping out their insides, and their intestines are spelling one word. And that one word is going to spell, if I remember correctly, Nimane, which means panic, or Badabkasa, the raven of battle. Well, all the innards that are removed and all the pieces of intestine all make one of the letters that goes into Nimane. And that's realised quite towards the end of the book. And who or what is ripping out the guts of these poor victims and spelling Nimane? Well, I could tell you, but I'd be spoiling the plot. Let's put it this way. It's a cracking ending, and you'll find out then. Yeah. Well, you see, we've got a Celtic tribe that, obviously been making these offerings of the kids over many, many years, as Kim Nichols, who is the lady in question, working out, carbon dating all the archaeological finds on this dig, including carbon dating the kids' skulls. And some of them are very, very old, and some of them are more modern. Some are like 2,000 years old, some are only 500 years old. And it's a bit of a puzzle, is that she can't quite work out why some are so old and some are so young. And it seems that whatever has been sacrificed to in the past has been sacrificed to over some time. Now we get to work out that some of the Celtic gods are quite tasty. Yeah, rather tasty gods. We have one called Dagda. The Celtic tribe Dagda is one of their gods. He's the most powerful and the most feared god. Supposedly grotesque, hundreds, thousands of feet high, with burning red eyes. Yeah. And he is hideous and has many, many powers, some of which could be the gateway to hell and possibly the end of the world. And maybe that's why sacrifices need to be made to keep the little man happy. Tell me, it's really, really weird. Turns out that Dagda has got a queen, his mate, Morrigan, Queen of the Demons. She's a Babakatha. She's known as Nimain, where all these intestines have been spelling out who is Morrigan. Where has she come from? Did she come from the pit? Has she come back with the Dagda? Are they wanting to kill us all? Don't know. Have to read book and find out, won't you? There's a rather strange skip out of the storyline that's in here. I've got to mention it, and it's not for the squeamish. If you don't like animal abuse, maybe this book might not be for you. If you can read it and stomach it, you did better than me. I could not read those sections. I just went. I remember reading it the first time, and my goodness me, I wanted to bleach my eyeballs after I read it. And I knew where it would be, so I skipped those bits. I just don't have the stomach for it. I don't. And I mean, I can read some stuff, but animals, no, I can't. No, it's not my bag. So yeah, there is a lot of nasty animal abuse in here. Animal fight clubs, which is just awful, right? In my opinion, it was an unnecessary part put in the book, and the story didn't require it, if you like. It could have been written without that in, and it would still have been a fantastic book, and it still would have got you to the conclusion at the end. I just think maybe Shaun threw it in as a little bit extra gore because he could. It didn't really bring anything to the story, and that's just my opinion. That being said, if you can handle that level of disgusting depravity, then fill your boots, because you're gonna find it in spades in this one. Let me think, what else have I got to... Oh yeah, the mass murders being investigated by one of our chief characters, our chief protagonist. His name is Inspector Stephen Wallace, and he's been left in charge of the first gruesome accidental death in this book is, let me think, Philip Swanson, and he was impaled upon a wooden shaft right at the beginning of the book. There's an earthquake and the ground opens up, and that's how they find the Celtic tribes sacrificial chambers. And it happens to be that Philip Swanson falls into the pit. Spoiler alert, he ends up on a wooden spike, and by the time they find him, he's in his death throes, his death rattle, because he's just taken that long to die. Which is quite a shame, really, to be impaled upside down on a wooden shaft, and it takes you about 3 hours to pop your clogs. Bizarre, but there we are. And that was the death of Philip Swanson, and that's the first grisly death that you will have in the book. That's the only grisly, gory one that I'm going to spoil it for you, but I will actually put on my title, there are a few spoilers in this, but I'm not going to spoil it because I want you to enjoy it, right? Because it is a cracking good read. Anyway, Inspector Stephen Wallace is in charge of all the grisly murders in Longfield. Said it again, another short. And children's kidnapping. What do they need the children for? Obviously, the victims that are murdered are, obviously dead, with their intestines spelling out the word Nema. What do we call it again? I just read it to you. I'll get to my bookmark. Nemain, right? The intestines are spelling Nemain. Nemain is Morrigan. Morrigan, who are you, Morrigan? Where have you come from, Morrigan? Dagda's mate, we know that. Is that why the kiddies have been kidnapped? Don't know. Have to read the book, won't you? Find out. Absolutely. But I tell you, when I say that this is a gory book, whoa, it is. Absolutely. It's Splattermilk finest. You won't be disappointed with the ending. It reads like a cinema Lucci Fulci ending. Think of The Beyond. If you've ever really seen The Beyond, City of the Dead as well, you'll love it. Yeah, it's that kind of ending. It's fitting for the book. It is, and it's a lot of fun. I'm just going to read you a little bit because I know I love to read. Part 1. Beware of night, for we all know he's loose again. Queen's Rashie. Very good band, actually. Did you know this site was unstable, he asked. Certainly not, Cooper snapped. Cooper is the lead archaeologist, right? Or we wouldn't have just started working here. Just asking, Stephen Wallace murmured quietly. The uniformed man beside the winch gave a thumbs up, and the inspector walked around the shaft, guessing that the hole must be at least 12 feet in diameter. He pulled off his jacket, handing it to another of the waiting constables, then turned to the ambulanceman. I'll go down first, he said. Check it out. He took a torch from one of his constables and held it out in his hand. Let me have that two-way. The harness which dangled from the winch was a piece of rope tied in a loop at the bottom. Wallace put one foot into it, gripping the hemp securely with his free hand, and lowered himself the first few feet into the darkness. He flicked on the torch, playing the powerful beam around the walls of the shaft. The rope creaked ominously as he was lowered. A foul stench filled his nostrils, a fusty, cloying odour which made him gasp for air. It was cold, too, and the policeman shivered involuntarily, pointing the torch down every now and then in hope of illuminating the bottom of the shaft. The beam was quickly swallowed by the gloom. He was lowered further, slowly, evenly. The smell was growing worse, and Wallace coughed, trying to breathe through his mouth to minimize its effects. The stench was making him light-headed. 50 feet, and still no sign of the bottom of the shaft. "Anything yet, Gov?" The voice on the two-way belonged to Sergeant Bill Dayton, and Wallace recognized it immediately. "Nothing," he said, and coughed again. 70 feet. Wallace was beginning to wonder if his men had enough rope. Just how deep was this bloody hole? The cold, like the smell, seemed to be intensifying, so much so that the inspector was now shivering uncontrollably. And yet there was no breeze. The air was unmoving, like stagnant water in a blocked well. 80 feet. He shone the torch beneath him once more, and this time he picked out something. A few feet below, something was glistening. "Nearly there," Wallace said in his two-way. "Can you see Swanson?" That's Philip Swanson. Yes, that poor man. Asked Cooper. "Not yet." He snapped his jaws together, cutting off the sentence. There were sounds of movement from below. The faint rustling sounds, almost imperceptible, but nevertheless present. Like, like what? Wallace thought. He swallowed hard and shone the torch down once more. "Oh, Jesus!" he exclaimed. Another couple of feet, and he'd reached the bottom of the shaft. Wallace stepped out of the harness and shone his torch forward, waving a hand in front of his nose to waft away the nauseating stench that filled his nostrils. He wished he could wipe away what he saw, too. There was a wooden spike in the centre of the pit, placed with almost mathematical precision, so it was in the very middle. The stake was a fully 15 feet tall, tipped by a razor-sharp point, unblunted by the passage of time. Impaled on this spike, like an insect on a board, was Philip Swanson. The spike had penetrated his back, just above the left scapula, tearing through his body before erupting from it at a junction on his right thigh and torso. He had landed on the spike with such momentum that his body were almost touching the ground. Blood had sprayed everywhere. It had run in thick rivulets from his nose and mouth, gushed freely from his shattered groin, and pumped in huge gouts from his stomach, which was torn open to reveal a tangle of internal organs which looked on the point of breaking loose. Thick spurts of odorous green bile from the pulverized gallbladder had mingled with the blood, which was now caked thickly all over the corpse and at the base of the sharpened pole. There were fragments of broken bones scattered about, and Swanson's arms dangled limply on either side of him, one of them attached only by the merest thread of skin and ligament. Smashed bone glistened whitely amidst the purple mess of flesh and blood. Wallace knelt close to the dangling head, hearing that strange rustling once more. It took him a second to realize that it was wind hissing through Swanson's punctured lungs. Wallace frowned, for that had to be happening. The man had to be alive, but surely that was impossible. He lifted the head gently, looking at the bloodied face. Swanson's eyes snapped open. In that split second, Wallace fell back, dropping the torch, stumbling in the darkness. He heard a thick, throaty gurgle and realised that it was Swanson's death rattle. "Shit," muttered the policeman, his heart thudding madly against his ribs. He wiped his face with one shaking hand, gradually regaining his composure. Somehow Swanson had clung to life for over an hour while skewered on the stake. Wallace didn't even attempt to imagine the suffering he'd gone through. The inspector regained his torch and shone it on the archaeologist's face once more, seeing that the eyes were now staring wide, the pupils hugely dilated. The soft rustling sound had stopped. "Wallace, are you all right?" They recognised Cooper's voice and found his radio. "Terrific," he said wearily. "Dayton, can you hear me? Clear everybody away from the pit, then get a stretcher down here." "On its way, Gov," the sergeant told him. Wallace shone his torch around the base of the shaft, looking at the objects which were scattered in all directions. Coins, weapons, jewellery, and bones. So many bones. As the beam fell on Swanson again, he quickly moved it away, playing it over the walls. He reached for the two-way, his eyes fixed ahead. "Cooper, you still there?" he said. A crackle of static, then the archaeologist answered. "What is it?" "When the body's removed, you better come down here," the policeman said, the torch wavering slightly as he shone it ahead. The beam flickered for a second. "There's something I think you should see." Now doesn't that just set you up for an absolutely rollicking read? You are going to have so much fun with this book, I do promise you. Now, my darlings, I have to say goodbye. But remember, holy for catcher, Muriel! Just what exactly is in this book? There we are. I hope you really enjoy it. I really do. I had a really good time. I did. It took me back to being a teenager, and that's never a bad thing. Anyway, my darlings, happy readings and enjoy. And if you like what I do, you can give me a thumbs up. And if you really like what I do, you can always give me a follow and see what I come back with the rest of the month. You never know. Probably something splatterish, punkish. Will it be another James? Will it be another Shaun? Will it be a John Halkin? You never know. Yeah? Anyway, give Shaun Hutson's Relics a go. You'll be glad you did. Bye-bye.